Married couple sitting on $300,000 in cash, driving a car that's a decade old, about to hand over six figures for a run down Lake House 3 hours from home. Everyone in the comments told them they were making a mistake. But when you actually run their numbers, the crazy part isn't what you'd think. Hey Profiteer, Eric here. Welcome back to Real Money Stories. Today's story comes from the Personal Finance subreddit, and it's about a couple who's been quietly saving for a dream purchase for years and is now getting cold feet right as they're about to pull the trigger. This one comes with a plot twist because the original poster added an edit after the comments rolled in, so we're actually getting the full picture before we even hit the original question. Let me read it to you in their own words. Edith, thanks all for the responses. A lot of great points. A lot of people have suggested using my cash to instead pay off the student loan and mortgage debt. For a little context on why I haven't done that, much of the cash I have was the result of the company I work at IPyong a few years ago. I was lucky enough to receive several $100,000 as a result of this, which is how I bought my current house a few years ago. That said, that was a one-time event, and I don't have a foreseeable way of replacing that money were I to spend it on paying off my loan. It would likely take a decade to save it up again based on the monthly payments I'd be saving. By then, my daughter will be 13 and will be 48, and taking on a challenge like this would be much harder. I should also add that I am generally extremely frugal in 99% of other areas. I live way below my means, don't buy new clothes often, drive a 10-year-old car, etc. Much of this is motivated by me wanting to get a lake house like this, deep-seated emotional need, sadly. I have the opportunity to buy a cheap fixer upper lake house in the low 100K range. Property taxes are only a few thousand per year. The place is a dump, but at that price point, I can afford to fix it up over the course of the next year or two. Current financial situation, dual income, 1 kid, age 3, approx 25K, home worth about 255K, mortgage payment around 1,700 high tax area, cash savings 300K, been keeping cash for exactly this purpose, stocks, crypto, for retirement 40K, only debt is about 60K student loans. We are both 38. Biggest problem is that their place is about 3 hours away. I work remotely, wife does not. However, both of our parents live in the area where the lake house is, so we go up there a lot in the summer. It'd take me some time to fix up or some additional renovation spend to make it livable. Seems a little crazy to me, but then again, I've been sitting on this cash with the plan of buying a place like this. Okay, first thing I want to say reading this is not a reckless person. This is someone who's been disciplined for years, quietly building toward one specific goal. And now that the moment's here, they're second guessing whether wanting something for themselves makes them irresponsible. That self-doubt is so common, and it's almost never deserved. I've been writing about money for over a decade now, and the pattern I keep seeing with windfall money specifically is this. People treat it like it's not really theirs, like it needs to be spent correctly. Or it doesn't count. The original poster is already doing something smarter than most. They've earmarked it, they've planned around it, they've stayed frugal everywhere else to protect that cash. That's not stupid. That's actually the hard part done right. So let's talk about what I'd probably do if I were sitting in their spot. The first thing I'd look at is what's sometimes called the house money effect. It's a behavioral finance concept, and here's the idea. Money that arrives as a windfall, an inheritance, a bonus, an IPO payout gets mentally filed differently than money you earned paycheck by paycheck. People spend windfalls faster and looser because it doesn't feel as real. And here's why that matters for this couple specifically. Their $300,000 in cash is IPO money. It's easy to treat it like house money at a casino, cash you feel free gambling away because you didn't really earn it yourself. But the fix isn't to avoid spending this cash. It's holding it to the exact same standard you'd hold any other $300,000. Run the real numbers on the lake house the same way you'd run them if that cash came from 10 years of paychecks. If it survives that test, spend it with a clear conscience. The second thing I'd flag is what I'd call the true cost of a fixer-upper, and this is where I'd slow down the most. Low 100K, purchase price on a dump by a lake is never really a low 100K project. Renovation budgets on older properties routinely run 20 to 30% over the original estimate because the real problems stay hidden behind the walls until renovation begins. Add property taxes, insurance on a second home, utilities you're now paying twice, and the true first-year cost of ownership is meaningfully higher than the sticker price. And here's why that matters. This isn't a reason not to buy. It's a reason to go in with a real contingency fund, not just a renovation guess, before a single check gets written. Now here's where it gets complicated, because the internet's advice on this wasn't wrong, it was just incomplete. Almost everyone in the comments told this person to take the cash and wipe out the $60,000 in student loans and knock down the mortgage instead. And normally, I'd agree with that instinct. There's a whole framework built around it, the debt avalanche method. You aggressively pay down your highest interest debt first because you know exactly what interest cost you're eliminating with no market risk involved. If that student loan is sitting at 7 or 8%, paying it off is one of the most reliable ways to cut a known cost. But the original poster, already explained the wrinkle, and it's a good one. That cash isn't replenishable the normal way. It came from a single IPO event, not from a savings habit they can just repeat. If they drain the cash to pay off debt today, rebuilding that kind of cushion could take a decade of the freed up payment amount by their own admission. By then, their daughter's a teenager and they're pushing 50, a very different season of life for taking on a project this size. So the debt avalanche is still the mathematically correct answer in a vacuum. It's just not obviously the right answer for THI's family at Teach's moment with Teach's specific kind of money. That's the part a lot of the comments missed. Third, I'd want to guard the emergency fund rule no matter which way they go, the general guideline of keeping 3 to 6 months of expenses in reachable cash before you deploy the rest. Even after buying the lake house and setting aside a renovation contingency, this couple would still likely have well over $100,000 in liquid reserves. That's on top of stocks and crypto and $440,000 in retirement accounts. That's a household that can absorb a surprise without panic. That cushion is really the whole reason this purchase isn't as risky as it might feel emotionally. And the last piece I'd point to is something I'd call intentional trade off budgeting. It's basically a personalized version of the 50-30-20 budget framework, needs, wants, savings, except this couple has spent years suppressing almost all of their wants, spending to fund one specific, meaningful want. That's not dysfunction. That's actually the framework working as intended, just concentrated into a single large purchase instead of spread across small ones. A decade-old car and no new clothes in exchange for a place their kid grows up visiting grandparents at by a lake every summer, that's a values-based trade a lot of financial planners would happily endorse. Now, I'd still say talk to a qualified financial advisor about your specific situation before finalizing something this size, especially around how the renovation spend interacts with your taxes and your existing mortgage. But based on what's here, stupid is not the word I'd use. So what? This specific story is about a lake house and a 6-figure windfall, but the principle underneath it applies no matter what the dollar amount is in front of you. Windfall money deserves the same scrutiny as earned money. The obviously correct financial move isn't always correct for your specific timeline and circumstances. And a big purchase isn't reckless just because it's emotional, as long as the math behind it still makes sense. If you found this helpful, share it with someone dealing with the same thing. Until next time, stay profitable. Just a friendly reminder that this episode is intended for entertainment and education purposes only and should not be considered financial or legal advice. Picture a household making $300,000 a year. Now picture their kid filling out financial aid forms and getting rejected again and again because on paper, that income makes them too rich for a single dollar of aid, but not for the reason you'd think. And the fix isn't what most people assume. Hey Profiteer, Eric here. Welcome back to Real Money Stories. Today's post comes from the Poverty Finance subreddit, from a soon-to-be college student staring down medical school with parents who make plenty but won't help pay for any of it. This one's about what happens when a $50,000 loan might turn into something a lot bigger. Let me read it to you in their own words. My parents make $300K a year and won't help at all for college. I mean, I don't expect them to because I will be an adult. The problem is that I can't take out private loans because they won't co-sign and interest rates will be extremely high. I want to attend medical school after, but I'm afraid of the $50K loan turning into $200K if I wait all those years. Realistically, how can I even attend college with no loans and no financial aid? Eat it, I can't take private loans because of massive interest, and I don't qualify for federal ones. Eat it, I want to clarify that I do not want my parents to pay. It's my responsibility. I just cannot get federal loans because they make too much. I really have no clue if it's even possible to attend. Okay? First thing I want to say, reading this, I don't hear entitlement in this post. I hear someone who explicitly does not want a handout. They just want a path that doesn't wreck them financially before their career even starts. That's a pretty mature way to think at 18. I've been writing about money for over a decade, and the pattern I keep seeing with this exact question is people assuming my parents make too much means every door is locked, when really only some of the doors are locked. So here's what I'd probably do in their shoes, and I want to start with a correction because I think it changes the whole plan. There's a wrinkle most people miss. Parental income doesn't lock you out of all federal loans, only some of them. Fill out the FAFSA form regardless of their income. Even at $300,000 a year of parent income, a dependent undergrad is still eligible for the direct unsubsidized loan. It's not need-based. Anyone enrolled at least half-time qualifies regardless of what mom and dad make. It's capped roughly $5,500 freshman year, climbing towards $7,500 by senior year, somewhere around $27,000 total across 4 years. That's real money, and it's federal money, which means a fixed rate and actual repayment protections instead of a private loan that needs a cosigner they don't have. And here's why that matters so much for this particular person. They said they can't get a private loan without a cosigner. Fine, for this piece of it, they don't need one. Second thing, $27,000 doesn't cover 4 years at most schools, so the gap must close somewhere, and that's where I'd look hard at what's sometimes called the 2+2 pathway. 2 years at a community college, transfer the credits, finish the final stretch at a 4-year school. Degree comes from the school that goes on the diploma either way. And here's why it works. Tuition at a community college can run a quarter of what a state university charges for the same intro biology or calculus class. Med schools care about GPA and MCH scores, not which campus you sat in for organic chemistry as a sophomore. For someone aiming at medical school, this is one of the cleanest ways to shrink total debt before the truly expensive years even start. Now, up to this point, everything I've said is pretty standard undergrad advice. Here's where it stops being standard, because the real question in this post, the one about a $50,000 loan swelling into $200,000, isn't about college. It's about medical school. Let's talk about why a $50,000 loan can balloon into $200,000, because the mechanism matters more than the scary number. It's called capitalized interest. While you're in school, and often through a grace period after, unpaid interest doesn't just sit idle. It gets added to the loan balance, and then future interest gets charged on that new, bigger balance. Run that through 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of med school, and 3 to 7 years of residency where a resident's salary barely covers rent. And yes, $50,000 of principal can genuinely multiply several times over before a serious dollar of it gets paid down. The lesson isn't to panic. It's about treating every year of deferment as a real cost and paying the interest as it accrues whenever possible, even in small amounts, specifically to stop that snowball from feeding on itself. Fourth, and this is the one I'd actually research first if medicine is the real destination, the Armed Forces Health Professions Scholarship Program, HPSP for short, covers full medical school tuition and pays a monthly stipend in exchange for a service commitment as a military physician afterward. It's not for everyone. The commitment is real and it runs for years, but for someone already worried about a balance that could hit 6 figures before residency even starts, it's worth serious research alongside the civilian route. There are also school-specific and state-specific scholarships tied to practicing in underserved areas after graduation, solving the same problem from a different angle. I'd also say none of this replaces sitting down with a financial aid officer or a qualified financial advisor who can look at their actual numbers, state residency, and school list. This is general direction, not a personalized plan for their exact situation. Here's the bigger picture. This post was about a $300,000 income and a $50,000 loan that might become $200,000. But the principle underneath it is smaller than either number and more useful. Money you're not required to pay right now is still a cost. It's just a deferred one. The earlier you understand that mechanism, the more choices you keep, whether you're financing a bachelor's degree or a house. Just a friendly reminder that this episode is intended for entertainment and education purposes only and should not be considered financial or legal advice. If you found this helpful, share it with someone dealing with the same thing. Until next time, stay profitable. $400 sitting in an account that's about to lock her out of it for good. She just found out she's losing her job, and not next month, not next week, today. If that money doesn't get spent before the badge stops working, it's gone.
No refund, no transfer.
No grace call to HR next Tuesday. So what do you actually buy in the space of a few hours when the receipt has to clear before the clock runs out? The answer isn't what most people guess. Hey Profiteer, Eric here. Welcome back to Real Money Stories. Today's story comes from the Personal Finance subreddit, and it's built around one of the sneakiest deadlines hiding in the tax code, the FSA, ooze it or lose it clock. This kind of thing plays out somewhere in the country pretty much every single day, a layoff notice landing on top of a benefits account that's about to evaporate. Let me read it to you in their own words. I have gotten notification from HR that my employment will be officially terminated as of midnight tonight. I kept forgetting about my FSA card, so I've barely spent any money from it. None of my prescriptions are close. I can't get an eye exam today, but I can buy frames, which I might do, and I already have tons of medical supplies I need for the time being. I think my remaining balance is around $400. Outside eyeglass frames and ibuprofen, what are some things I could spend on in a rush? Update, thanks for all your suggestions. I got a notification I was being cut off at 5 p.m., not midnight as I had previously thought. I ran out to Costco and got a couple pairs of eyeglass frames and some medical supplies. The remainder went to an Amazon FSA only order. In the end, my grand total was less than $1 short of my balance. Success! Okay, first thing I want to say, reading this, getting laid off with almost no warning is stressful enough on its own. You're processing a job loss. You're probably thinking about health insurance, income, what to tell your family, and somewhere in the middle of all that, a countdown timer shows up on money that's already yours. That's a rough combination. So credit the original poster for keeping their head enough to even ask the question, let alone nail the landing within $1. I've been writing about money for over a decade now, and the thing most articles get wrong about FSAs is treating them like a savings account. They're not. And that misunderstanding is exactly what almost cost this person $400. So here's what I'd probably do in their shoes, and honestly, what I'd tell a friend to do the moment that termination email lands. First, understand the framework you're actually operating inside, the use it or lose it rule. A flexible spending account isn't your money sitting in a bank waiting for you. It's an IRS-sanctioned arrangement where you agreed, back at open enrollment, to set aside pre-tax dollars for medical costs during the plan year. In exchange, your employer fronts the full annual amount up front if you need it. The trade-off is that the account lives with the employer, not with you. Walk out the door, and in most cases, your access to that balance walks out with you. And here's why that matters so much in this exact situation. Unlike a 401k or an HSA, there's no vesting, no rollover to a personal account, nothing that follows you home. The next step, the very first thing to do the minute you get layoff news, is pull up your plan documents or call the benefits line and ask a pair of questions. When exactly does my card get shut off? And is there a run-out period that still lets me submit claims for expenses I already incurred? Second framework, and this is the one that actually solves the problem in a rush, know the eligible expense list. FSA dollars only cover IRS qualified medical expenses under the tax code, but that list is a lot broader than most people realize. Reading glasses and frames, sunscreen rated SPF 15 or higher, first aid kits, thermometers, blood pressure monitors, contact lens solution, even some baby monitors with a health function. The mechanism here is simple. The IRS defines the category, but retailers like the FSA store or Amazon's FSA eligible storefront filter their entire catalog, so you're not guessing item by item while the clock is running. That's exactly the move the original poster made, straight to Costco for frames and supplies, then an Amazon FSA only order that mopped up the rest. Now, the obvious move looks simple, just log into one of those stores and start clicking buy before 5 o'clock, but there's a wrinkle almost everyone misses. The deadline isn't when the money technically leaves your account, it's when your ability to authorize a purchase disappears. Some employers cut card access the instant HR processes the termination, not at midnight, not at end of business, sometimes within the hour. That's exactly what happened here. The original poster thought they had until midnight and found out it was actually 5 p.m. If you assume you've got all day and you don't, you can lose a real balance that was sitting right there the whole time. Third, and this one's worth knowing even if it didn't apply here, FSA Obara continuation. If you've contributed more to your FSA for the year than you've actually spent, meaning the account is underfunded relative to your remaining balance, federal law can let you keep contributing after you leave through COBRA, paying the rest of your annual election out of pocket in exchange for keeping the money within reach. It's a narrow tool. It only makes sense when the math favors you, when the leftover balance is bigger than what you'd pay to keep the account open. For a $400 balance, spending it down in a rush, like the original poster did, is almost always the simpler and cheaper path. But if you're ever staring at a much bigger balance on your way out the door, ask HR about it before you assume the money's just gone. Fourth, think in terms of a stockpile, not a shopping list. Since the money disappears regardless of when you'd actually use the item, the smart play is to front-load anything shelf-stable and genuinely useful, extra contact solution, a spare pair of glasses, a stocked first aid kit, ibuprofen and other OTC basics you'll need eventually. You're not wasting money buying things early, you're converting an asset that's about to hit zero into things you'd need regardless. And just a quick note, because this always matters, this episode is for entertainment and education. It's not personalized financial or legal advice. Every employer's FSA plan documents are a little different. So if you're facing a deadline like this yourself, talk to a qualified financial advisor or your benefits administrator about your specific situation. The specific number in this story was $400 and a same-day deadline. But the principle underneath it shows up everywhere. Use or lose it. Benefits don't wait for you to notice them. They expire on their own schedule, not yours. PTO payouts, gift cards, airline miles, even a company match window, the day you leave is the day you need to check what's vanishing. The original poster got it right down to less than $1. That's not luck, that's just someone who asked the right question fast enough. If you found this helpful, share it with someone dealing with the same thing. Until next time, stay profitable. All I will say is, I don't care what job you work. If you work 40 hours a week for society, you're entitled to a roof over your head, gas and food on the table, $15 an hour, 40 hours a week. That's about $200 a month after taxes. Rent alone, $1,400 of it gone before food, before gas, before a single bill. So what's the actual plan here? Stick around because the math is worse than you think, and so is the fix. Hey Profiteer, Eric here. Welcome back to Real Money Stories. Today we're breaking down a post from the Poverty Finance subreddit that's blowing up right now. Almost 1,700 upvotes, over 450 comments, all because someone said the quiet part out loud about entry-level wages and rent. This isn't a long, detailed post. It's short. It's a gut punch. And honestly, I think that's why it hit so hard. Let me read it to you in the original poster's own words. All I will say is, I don't care what job you work. If you put in 40 hours of your time per week to contribute to society, you're entitled to a roof over your head, gas, and food on the table. Those who try to justify a system that says otherwise are not worth your time. Okay, first thing I want to say reading this is, they're right. There's no hedge here. No, well, actually, 40 hours a week is a full commitment of your time and your life. Wanting that to cover rent, gas, and food isn't asking for luxury. It's asking for the floor. I've been writing about money for over a decade, and the thing almost nobody talks about directly is this. Minimum and near minimum wage jobs were never designed structurally around today's rent numbers. The wage grew a little, rent in a lot of cities doubled or worse. Nobody adjusted the first number to match the second. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend there's a clever budgeting trick that erases a math problem this big, but there are moves that actually change your position inside a broken system, and I want to walk through what I'd probably do if I were in this spot. First framework, the 30% rule and why it's basically fiction right now. For decades, the guideline was don't spend more than 30% of your gross income on housing. On $15 an hour, 30% of your monthly pay is under $1,000. $1,400 in rent isn't 30%, it's closer to 60 or 65% of take home. And here's why that number matters so much. Once housing crosses about 50% of your income, there's almost no room left for an emergency fund, so one car repair or one missed shift turns into a missed rent payment. The rule isn't wrong, the market broke the rule. The next step isn't guilt, it's math. Sit down and calculate your actual percentage, because seeing the real number is what tells you whether the fix is income, expenses, or both. Second framework, cost of living arbitrage. This is the uncomfortable one, but it's real. The same $15 wage buys wildly different lives depending on the zip code. A one bedroom that's $1,400 in one metro might be $600 or $700 an hour and a half away. And here's the mechanism. Rent is driven by local demand, but a lot of entry-level and remote-friendly work no longer needs to sit in that same zip code. I'm not saying uproot your whole life tomorrow. I'm saying it's worth running the numbers on what even a modest move does to that ratio, because sometimes the highest leverage financial decision isn't a new budget app, it's a different mailing address. Now here's where it gets complicated, because moving isn't free and it isn't always possible. Family, custody arrangements, a support system, a job you can't replicate elsewhere. Plenty of people reading this can't just relocate their way out of the problem. So let's talk about what's left when moving isn't on the table. Third framework, what I'd call wage stacking through job hopping. There's solid data showing that people who stay in an entry-level role usually see raises of 2 through 4% a year. People who switch employers every 12 to 18 months in that early career window often see jumps of 10, 15, sometimes 20% in a single move. And here's why. Your current employer is pricing you against what it costs to keep you. A new employer is pricing you against what it costs to replace someone else. Those are two very different numbers. So the next step isn't loyalty for its own sake. It's treating the first 2 or 3 years of any job as a base camp, not a destination. Keep your resume current, keep applying even when you're employed, and let competing offers do the negotiating for you. Fourth framework, and this one's about survival mode specifically. Shared housing as a bridge, not a defeat. Splitting a 2-bedroom with a roommate on that same $1,400 unit can cut your housing costs toward that 30% target overnight without waiting on a raise or a new city. It's not glamorous, and I get that it doesn't feel like progress. But the mechanism is simple. You're not changing your income, you're changing your fixed cost, and fixed costs are the fastest lever you actually control this month, not in 6 months. I want to say clearly, this is general education, not personalized advice for your exact situation. Everyone's lease, credit, and family setup is different, so I genuinely suggest talking to a qualified financial advisor or even a local housing counselor about your specific numbers before making a big move like relocating or breaking a lease. The specific numbers here were $15 an hour and $1,400 in rent, but the principle underneath this whole post applies whether your rent is $400 or $4,000. When a fixed cost eats more than half your income, you don't fix that with a coupon or a lat joke. You fix it by attacking either the income side or the cost side on purpose with a plan, instead of waiting for the math to magically balance. Just a friendly reminder that this episode is intended for entertainment and education purposes only and should not be considered financial or legal advice. If you found this helpful, share it with someone dealing with the same thing. Until next time, stay profitable. at fault, not even close. Someone else runs a red light, totals your car, and suddenly you're standing in a dealership lot doing math you never wanted to do. Buy it outright for 30 grand, finance it, or lease, which one Redditor is convinced is basically a scam. Turns out the answer isn't as simple as he thinks. Hey Profiteer, Eric here. Welcome back to Real Money Stories. Today's post comes from the Poverty Finance subreddit, and it's one of those deceptively simple questions that most personal finance content just skips past entirely. Does leasing a car ever actually make sense? This one's short, it's a little heated, and honestly, that anger makes total sense. Let me read it to you in their own words. Got into a car accident, see not at fault. Fuck you, David, for running a red light, and I've been exploring options. One option that keeps coming up is leasing, and I just don't understand why it's an option or why people do it. Buying a car outright is too expensive at anywhere from $30K and up, but if you manage it, that means you own the car. Same with financing it, you may pay more a month, but at least you own it once the term ends. Leasing seems silly since you're paying all this money to be capped on a set number of miles per year. Then you hand the car back somewhere between 2 and 4 years later, depending on the terms. Why would you spend money to have nothing in the future and be back at needing a car? Seems like a scam. Okay, first thing I want to say, getting hit by someone running a red light and then having to make a 5-figure decision under pressure puts you in a rough spot. And the frustration in this post is completely earned. David, wherever you are, you owe this person a car. I've been writing about money for over a decade, and the pattern I keep seeing in Lease versus Buy questions is that people treat it like a pure math problem. Which car costs less over time? But it's not really that. It's a cash flow and lifestyle problem wearing a math costume. Once you see that the whole leasing is a scam thing starts to look different. So here's what I'd probably do in this situation. Just to be clear, please talk with a qualified financial advisor about your specific numbers before you sign anything. This is general education, not a personalized recommendation. First framework, total cost of ownership, not sticker price. Most people compare a lease payment to a loan payment and stop short. That's the wrong comparison. You need to stack up the full 4-year picture: purchase price, financing interest, insurance, maintenance once the warranty runs out, and resale value at the end. And here's why that matters. A financed car looks cheaper monthly, but by year 3 you're paying for brake jobs and transmission flushes a lease car never sees, because leases are almost always still under factory warranty the whole time you have them. Add that up and the gap between leasing and owning shrinks a lot faster than people expect. Second framework, the 24-10 rule. It's a simple guardrail a lot of financial planners use for car buying. 20% down, 4-year loan max, and no more than 10% of your gross monthly income going toward total transportation costs, payment, insurance, gas, all of it. And here's the mechanism behind it. Car loans longer than 4 years almost always outlast the car's usefulness to you, which is how people end up upside down, owing more than the car's worth right when they need to sell or trade it. If a buy it outright plan doesn't fit inside that rule, that's your signal the ownership math isn't as clean as it looks on paper. Now, here's where it gets complicated, because up to this point, everything points toward buying being the obviously smarter move. And for most people, over a long enough time horizon, it usually is. But there's a wrinkle almost nobody mentions in these threads. Leasing exists for a specific kind of person, and it's not irrational for them. Someone who wants predictable payments and zero surprise repair bills. Someone who drives for work and can deduct the lease as a business expense. Someone who just wants to never think about a car breaking down while they're rebuilding their life after, say, an accident that wasn't their fault. That's the third framework, and I'd call it match the car to the mission. The question isn't which is objectively better, it's what am I actually optimizing for right now? If you're already stretched thin and stressed out, a lease with a warranty and a fixed payment removes decisions from your plate at a moment when you don't have bandwidth for more decisions. That's not a scam, that's paying for certainty. Fourth thing, and this one's specific to this situation. There's probably an insurance settlement check coming since the accident wasn't this person's fault. I'd treat that money carefully before it disappears into a down payment. Get the payout, get any gap insurance questions sorted if there was still a loan on the totaled car, and only then decide what to put down. Using a full settlement as a down payment on a new loan can feel like a clean, fresh start, but it also means you've now got zero cushion if something else goes wrong this year. The 3 to 6 month emergency fund rule still applies here, car accident or not, and here's why. A cushion is what keeps one bad month from turning into a financial spiral, whether that's a repair bill or a job hiccup. So put together, here's the shape of it. Run the real total cost of ownership on both the finance option and a couple of lease quotes. Check whatever you're financing against the 24/10 rule. Be honest about whether you're optimizing for lowest long-term cost or lowest mental overhead this year. And protect some of that settlement money before it all goes into a car. The specific question here was about a totaled car and a lease that felt like a scam, but the real principle underneath it applies to way more than cars. It's this: the cheapest option on paper and the right option for your actual life aren't always the same thing, and pretending they are is how people end up house, poor, or car. Poor chasing a number that looked good in a spreadsheet. Just a friendly reminder that this episode is intended for entertainment and education purposes only and should not be considered financial or legal advice. If you found this helpful, share it with someone dealing with the same thing. Until next time, stay profitable. $10,000 underwater on a car loan built for a 2-income household that's now just 1. A newborn who's healthy, a girlfriend who can't work and doesn't know when she'll be able to again, and a spare $15,000 sitting in a driveway waiting for a decision. Sell it and dump the car?
Or save it.
The math here is not what you'd expect. Hey Profiteer, Eric here. Welcome back to Real Money Stories. Today's post comes from the Personal Finance subreddit, from a dad trying to figure out where $15,000 should go while his family runs on one income. This is a guy who did nothing wrong. He bought a car when the budget supported it, and then life changed the plan without asking him first. Let me read it to you in their own words. Hello everyone, I am a bit jammed up right now. To give you a brief backstory, a year ago my girlfriend and I were expecting our first child together. We were living together, splitting the bills and mortgage 50-50. Life was on easy mode. Midway through the pregnancy, we decided to buy a family car. Payments are $700 monthly, and this was comfortable for us at the time. However, a few months later into the pregnancy, my girlfriend became high risk and had to stop working altogether. After the birth of our child, both mom and baby did great. She hasn't returned to work due to ongoing and unexpected medical problems. This car payment is really doing a number on our budget. I'm $10K underwater on the car. I owe $35K and it's worth $25K and have about $9K in credit card debt. I used up all my savings. With me working extra, we are in the green, $300. I have a second car that's completely paid off that I can sell for $15K. My question is, should I put that $15K towards my auto loan and refinance my loan for a lower payment? Or should I put the money towards the credit card debt and bank the rest in savings for a safety net? Somebody close to me suggested I use the money to pay down the auto loan and dump the car completely. What would you do in my shoes? Thanks for reading and will appreciate any input. Okay? First thing I want to say reading this guy is holding a household together with $300 of breathing room a month, and he's still thinking clearly enough to ask the right question instead of panicking. That's not nothing. A high-risk pregnancy turning into an ongoing medical issue for his girlfriend isn't a budgeting failure, it's just life landing hard. And there's zero judgment here for the $700 payment that made total sense the day they signed the loan. I've been writing about money for over a decade, and the pattern I keep seeing with situations exactly like this one is that people fixate on the biggest, scariest number, in this case the $10,000 of negative equity on the car, and they miss that it's usually not the most expensive debt in the room. So here's what I'd probably do in his shoes. Not financial advice for your specific situation, just how I'd think through it if I were sitting across the table from him. First framework, the debt avalanche method. This just means you rank your debts by interest rate, not by how much they stress you out, and you attack the highest rate first. And here's why that matters mechanically. Credit card debt typically runs 20 to 25% interest. Auto loans, even a rough one, usually sit somewhere in the 6 to 10% range. So that $9,000 in credit card debt is quietly bleeding him 2 or 3 times faster than the car loan. Dollar for dollar, wiping out the credit cards first saves him more real money than throwing the same dollar at the car. My gut read is he pays off the $9,000 in card debt with a chunk of that $15,000 immediately before anything else. Now the obvious answer is wrong, and here's why. The obvious move, the one his friend suggested, is sell the second car, dump every dollar into the upside, down auto loan, done. But there's a wrinkle most people miss when a household drops to one income. That paid off second car isn't just $15,000 sitting in a driveway. It's a working vehicle with a $0 monthly payment in a household where one adult has ongoing medical appointments and a newborn, both of whom need reliable transportation. Selling it doesn't just move money around, it removes a piece of infrastructure they might genuinely need. That's not a reason to automatically keep it. It's a reason to make sure the decision accounts for more than just the loan balance. This leads into the second framework, the 3 to 6 month emergency fund rule. He says his savings are already gone. That's the flashing light here, more than the car loan. And here's why it matters mechanically. Right now, the household runs on $300 of margin a month, 1 car repair, 1 medical bill, 1 slow month at work, and they're back on the credit cards they just paid off. Before every dollar of that $15,000 goes toward debt, I'd carve off a slice, even just $1,000 or $2, into a bare bones cushion. It's not exciting, it's the difference between a bad month and a bad year. Third framework, and this one's specific to the car itself, call it closing the gap before you chase the rate. Refinancing sounds appealing because a lower payment would help the monthly budget right now. But here's the mechanism most people don't know. Lenders generally won't refinance a loan for more than the car is currently worth without the borrower kicking in cash to close that gap first. He's $10,000 underwater, so walking into a refinance today, most lenders either say no or offer him a rate that isn't actually better once you account for the risk they're taking on him. Pay down principal first, even a partial amount, and the loan to value ratio improves enough that refinancing becomes a real option instead of a long shot. So if I'm sequencing this with his numbers, in his shoes, roughly I'd pay off the $9,000 in credit card debt first, since it's the debt actually costing them the most. I'd hold back a small emergency cushion out of what's left, even $1,000 or $2. And whatever remains, I'd put straight against the principal on the car loan, specifically so a refinance conversation becomes realistic in a few months, rather than dumping the entire $15,000 at once and running his safety net back down to $0 the same week his income already got cut in half. And I genuinely recommend he talk with a qualified financial advisor about the specific refinance terms available to him. Loan to value cutoffs vary a lot by lender. The specific numbers here were $35,000 owed, $25,000 in value, $9,000 in card debt. But the principle underneath all of it, rank debt by what it actually costs you, protect your ability to absorb a bad month before you optimize anything else. That applies whether you're dealing with $15,000 or $1,500. Just a friendly reminder that this episode is intended for entertainment and education purposes only and should not be considered financial or legal advice. If you found this helpful, share it with someone dealing with the same thing. Until next time, stay profitable.